So been a little while since I've had a video to upload. So I figured I'd go ahead and do this one, and we were going to be doing a Q&A. So I've been getting some questions over on Instagram, as well as I just kind of prowled around Reddit a little bit, found some common questions people were asking. So I figured I'd just go ahead and go through them and answer them. So, what is the course schedule like, and where can I find some information? So I don't know for every program, but this shortened link, if you trust me, that's going to take you to the NSU Jacksonville brochure, which you can find on their website. It's going to have the timings of different events, such as when the classes start, when will you graduate, and things of that nature, as well as like what class am I going to be taking in the spring, and it'll tell you that. That comes up a little bit later in this presentation as well. So next up, this is just a little more elaboration on that. So this schedule is, okay, you can't see my mouse. This is an actual schedule I had during undergrad. Now my major at the time was, I think, biology. It was either biology or biomedical sciences at the time. So as you can see, a lot of repeat classes. You can see purple comes up 3 times, dark blue 3 times, green twice, light blue twice, a couple one-offs. These were labs. I don't remember what that one was. But as you can see, for like a 3 credit hour class, it would be 3 1-hour segments. Now, at least for here, now I don't know if it's the same way in NSU Fort Lauderdale, if it's this way in Denver, if it's this way at South University, but for us, this is kind of a structure it would have. And I want to push out a disclaimer, this is not an actual schedule. This is one I made up. Alright, I have not had this schedule. But rather than having the same class a few times, you'll have the classes really just one time. So far, we haven't had any repeat classes where we're taking one class across 2 separate days. If the class is 3 credit hours, you'll do 3 hours in one day, as you can kind of see right here. And I made this hypothetical schedule based off of the first summer semester. As you can see, there's a couple longer blocks in here. But I kind of prefer it this way because indirectly you have more downtime. In these, you do have a good bit of downtime, but not as chunky of a downtime as you would for like here in Jacksonville. Now again, this is all subject to change. This is just what kind of I've been going through here. So, does anyone work during the semester? I don't know of anybody who does. I'll just be completely honest about that. We have basically all of our professors, and I can't think of an exception, they're all practicing anesthesia practitioners. We have a doctor of anesthesia, we have CAAs, and I think that's it. But either way, they're all really busy people, so if they need to move a class, they will. So if we go back to this previous thing, let's just say the class in green, professor, they're on call, oh hey, they get called in, well this entire block might get moved to right here or anywhere along here. And because of that, and because those changes can happen last minute, to be able to have a job would be a bit of a stretch unless that job has a lot of flexibility for last minute call outs. Otherwise, you're going to be struggling, especially if you live far away from campus. We have some people who commute 30 minutes, hour and a half to campus every day. And if you have to make that kind of commute, then add into that a job on short notice changes, it would get to be overwhelming. Now, as for the time commitment, I do suppose it would be possible to have a job, but I would really advise against it because this is kind of one of those things where you just need to take it seriously in that respect. We're being able to block out that much time. We'll just even call it like 10 hours a week. That's 10 hours a week. You can't study, you can't rest, you can't take a break. So, something to consider. And again, I haven't even finished my 2nd semester yet. This might change next semester, I have no idea. But generally speaking, I wouldn't have a job. I had a job throughout undergrad, and I was between jobs a couple times, but never for too long. And I felt that was manageable, but I don't feel like it's manageable for this program, honestly, because the amount of studying I'm doing, I'm putting in about 60 hours a week dedicated to the program. So to add in a part-time job on top of that would get a little thin. So just kind of depends on your commitments and where your priorities lie. But I just don't see the return on investment for it because you're not going to be able to pay back your loans by working it, by door dashing. So next up, how many students are in a class? 35. We do have an Instagram page. I'm not the one who runs it, but on there you could kind of go through and count how many people we have. So we have 35 students, and I can assure you far more than 35 applied. So if I'm not mistaken, the class ahead of us, the class of 2025, if I'm not mistaken, they had, I think, the exact numbers we did as well. So I think they had 35 as well. Is CAA School hard? Yes. I mean, I feel like that kind of goes without saying, but it is very difficult. And it's going to be, the level of difficulty is going to depend on how you learn. If you're really good at memorizing, you may struggle on the application side. If you're really good at applying, you might struggle on the memorization side. I'm very good at applying. So if you give me a system of how something works, so we'll just go for like the heart, right? If you teach me the heart, I can try to figure out, okay, if I change this variable, then this changes. Okay, so then what happens if I change it too much or too little? And I can kind of tweak the system in that way and really apply it. Some people can't, and they'll just end up memorizing, like, okay, this variable does this, and then this. So everybody struggles in their own way. Like, while I might be really good at physiology, I'm not too hot in pharmacology. Other people, they're excelling in pharmacology and struggling in other classes that are more application-based. So it really just depends on what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Depending on your undergrad major and your prior experience in this sort of realm, you probably have a pretty good idea of where those are. So you can kind of figure out which classes you need to spend a little extra time studying. Is it still possible to do really good? Yes. I mean, as long as you put in the effort, I would say it's correlated returns in that if I spend twice as long studying for exam A than exam B, the grades will show for that. So, and again, that's just a general rule, and that's just how it's been for me at NSU Jacksonville. It could be completely different anywhere else you go. That's just my experience. But generally speaking, is CAA School hard? Yes. You have someone's life in your hand, and if you carry a 1 wrong, or if you add an extra 0, you will kill the patient. It's a, I'm not going to say it's like a grim reality, but it's certainly something that keeps you aware. Because if you accidentally give too much propofol, that person's going to be out cold for a little while, and if you mix too much midazolam with fentanyl, then they're not going to want to breathe, and if you do that to the wrong person, then you could send them into respiratory distress. If you have someone who laryngospasms, or they have some upper airway obstruction and they breathe in too hard, they could have an upper air, or they could have negative pressure pulmonary edema, and then they're going to be in the ICU for a couple of days. And all of those things are very important processes that we have to learn, understand, be able to dissect, know how to prevent, know how to treat it, know how to recognize it, understand the factors that could lead to it, steps you could take to prevent it. And because there's so many of those potential mishaps, we have to be taught, not necessarily all of them, at least in my experience yet, but you have to learn how to recognize it and be able to understand it. And because there's so much, it is a hard program. But yeah, I feel like I just kind of rambled at the end there, but you kind of get the idea. I mean, there's a reason that they have the requirements that they do to get in. If anybody could do it, then A, it wouldn't pay well. B, it would be really easy to get into. So just keep that in mind. Is CAA School competitive? So, building off of what I said in the last little slide, yes, it is competitive, but you do still stand a chance. Now, I don't know if the acceptance rate is published for my exact class, but I will say I've seen online people saying it's like 1 in 10 people get accepted or less. Again, I don't know if that information is out there or not for what my class is. I will say that our acceptance ratio was less than 10%. Now, one thing to keep in mind is how many of those applicants were qualified. Well, nobody would apply if they didn't think they had a chance of getting in. So it's 1 in 10 qualified applicants are getting in, which basically means it's pretty tight. So it kind of becomes less of a prerequisite game in that, oh, I got all the prerequisites, I'm going to get in, and more of a how do I stand out game. So figure out what you're good at, figure out how you can stand out, I'm not gonna say like make a name for yourself, but have a good enough structure backing you where you will leave a good impression on the interviewers or whoever's reviewing your application to the point where they'll look at it or they'll see you and they'll say, you know what, we're going to give him a shot. We're going to give her a shot. So is it competitive? Yes. It's probably not going to change anytime soon. Career path is getting very popular. So just keep that in mind. It is competitive, but it is still worth trying. You just might have to try harder. I can't say whether it was easier 10 years ago than it is now. I know less people knew about it 10 years ago. But how soon did you hear back from programs after submitting? So I submitted my application really twice. So I submitted in what I'll call round one, where I did South University, I did VCOM, and then I did Emory. Those were my first rounders. Now, Savannah, I heard back from in 6 days between applying and hearing back. Now, I did apply late into the cycle, so keep that in mind. I actually applied pretty soon to when this video is being recorded. Last year, obviously. VCOM, I heard, got an email back in 20 days. And then once I applied for my round twos, which was, I think I only applied to like 2. I think it was NSU Jacksonville and NSU Orlando or Tampa, probably Tampa. Heard back in 11 days from them. So there is a little bit of a gap. It's going to depend on the program and when you apply. If it's rolling admissions, then you need to get in there soon, but I kind of talk about that in an upcoming one. So if you don't hear back from them after a week, that's just kind of normal, I'd say. I'd honestly say that this was a bit of a fluke for how fast it was. So, what resources have I found the most helpful as a student? I primarily use Quizlet. I talk to some of my upperclassmen, so the class of 2025, I talk to them. Some other students love Anki. I mean, they swoon over Anki. I just wasn't a big fan of it because I grew up on Quizlet. It was what I was used to, so I just kind of fell into that pathway naturally. So really, if you have a good system from undergrad, you might be able to carry it over. It's just going to depend on kind of what you're good at, what you're good with, but if you have a good system, try to make it work, and if it doesn't, be amenable to change. But I basically make all my own Quizlets. We do have a few study sets that circulate around, made by like class of 2024 or last year's class of 25. So we just kind of make do with whatever we think works best. Some people only look at the professor's slides. Some people are textbook fiends and they'll just go through it page by page, try to memorize everything. I could not do that personally. So it's really just kind of dependent on A, what you like, and B, what the class requires. And I say requires because it's kind of hard to memorize by just looking at a page, in my opinion. I do better with flashcards. So just take that into consideration, figure out what works for you, try to apply it. If it doesn't work, ask other people what they're doing and give it a shot. I know some people really like to teach other people. As far as like YouTube and stuff, there's Ninja Nerd. I watched him a lot for A&P. Max Feinstein. He's really good for watching anesthesia stuff and kind of getting a good overall feel for things. Like he has a couple induction videos. I found those really helpful for like lab and things like that, like the more hands-on type of thing. Let's see, what time are we at? 15 minutes. How do you stay motivated throughout the late semester? Well, for me, I have a really strong fear of failure. I've had that for my entire academic career, and I don't really anticipate that going away anytime soon, for better or for worse. But I also just try to keep in mind that the job's not done until I walk across that stage. I mean, I'm getting close to the end of the semester, but I'm not close to the end of the journey. Anybody in the medical profession is basically going to be a student forever because things are always going to be changing. New treatments developed, old treatments phasing out, new ways of doing procedures, new unknown side effects, new drugs. I mean, you name it, it's going to change. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So, A, I have to keep in mind that I'm going to be a student forever. But B, just, like someone on Reddit said, $200,000 of debt is a good enough motivator for me. So, that is definitely one thing to keep in mind. But I also try to front load all of my semesters. So what I mean by that is if you break a semester in half, you've got pre-midterms and then post-midterms. So it's basically just two exact halves. I always try to do really good on the pre-midterm section because if I carry, we'll call it an 85 average into the post-midterm section, that means I can do worse on the post-midterm exams. So I study my butt off on the first half, so on the second half I can have a little bit more breathing room, and I don't have to sweat as hard because finals are a beast. Finals are, however many classes you have that many exams in 1 week. So if you've got 7 classes, that is 7 exams in 1 week, which is, not going to be fun. So the whole goal in my mind is to be able to fail every single final and pass the class. So what's my motivation? Just trying to keep going so I can fail every single final if I have to. And plus that way, if you're struggling in one of your classes, but you're doing really good in another one, you can kind of study a little bit more for this one than that one to kind of hopefully help your GPA in that respect. Or help you pass even, just whatever. When is it too late to apply into the cycle? So I applied really late. My first round applications, I sent those out October 31st. And then my second round applications were actually later, into like mid-November. So it's not necessarily too late. If you have a rolling admissions program, that might bite you in the butt. That's what happened to me in Auburn. The VCOM program it was rolling admissions. I applied on the very last day, and by the time they saw my application, they were already filled up. So it was an unfortunate thing, but at the end of the day, kind of just is what it is. So apply as soon as you can, but with that in mind, if your resume is going to get a lot better in a month and the application deadline isn't closed, you have to weigh that into consideration. It might be worthwhile to wait that extra little month until you get that better GRE score, until you go on that volunteering thing. It's just something to consider. So, but yeah, you stand a good shot as long as it's not last day rolling admissions like I did. So, you can still apply late and get in. It's not impossible. So this is one I pulled from Reddit. So this person graduated with a biology degree, 2022, 387 GPA. They know someone they can shadow. They lack patient care experience, relevant volunteer leadership, research experience. So, how long did it take you to become a competitive applicant before applying? So I'll just speak on kind of their general little spiel here. So, Let's see, biological sciences degree, that's a good one. Basically anything STEM is going to be good, but you can honestly get in with any degree as long as you have enough of a backbone. 387 GPA, again, that's good, that's probably above average. No anesthesiologist I can shadow, that's fantastic. You want as many shadowing hours as you can, because that shows that you have seen the work, you know the work, and once you know what it is, you still want to do it, which of course speaks highly. Lack patient care experience, not a deal breaker, but can definitely help the application. When I was applying, I didn't have a ton of patient care experience, but I was actively getting patient care experience. In fact, I had to ask off work to be able to go to my interview. So, patient care experience is good, but again, it's not a deal breaker. Relevant volunteer. My volunteering had nothing to do with anesthesia or medicine in any shape, form, or fashion. I volunteered with what is effectively a food bank. Leadership. I didn't really have a leadership role. I didn't really have anything like that on my application. At least not that's coming to mind. Research experience. I helped out on one scientific paper, and that was when I wanted to be an epidemiologist. And I got my name on that paper because I helped write basically the entire thing. Of course, it wasn't great. I had to get revised. I can't take credit for it, but still. So I had very minimal research experience. All of that to say, I had little patient care, my volunteer was irrelevant, I had no leadership, and I had moderate to very little research experience, and here I am today, coming out of the second, or soon to be coming out of the second semester. So take all of that into consideration that, again, a lot of these things are nice, but they're not deal breakers. So yeah, prereqs, Orgo 2, I think that's a requirement for most places. Statistics is how long did it take to become a competitive applicant before applying? Honestly, I applied right out of undergrad. I was applying while I was still in undergrad. So I do know of a couple people who were fresh out of undergrad, as in they graduated in like April and started in May. Like, there was that quick of a turnaround for some people. I graduated in December, started in May. So some people have quicker turnarounds, some people don't, but it is possible to just go straight from undergrad right into the program. Now, if you take a gap year and you check a lot of these boxes, that's obviously going to increase your odds of making it. So it really just kind of depends. So, it just depends. What classes are you taking and when? So this, if you followed the link I showed earlier, this is what you're going to be finding on that page. It's one of the things. So you can see the breakdown of when the different classes are, as well as the credit hours and what semester you're taking it in. So summer semester, that is from May to August. And then we have the August to December. Then we have January to May, this one's May to August again, and then basically just rinse and repeat that for these guys right here. So to walk you through it a little bit, you have 4 classroom semesters, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have 3 clinical semesters. Semester 1 is going to be the shortest one for NSU Jacksonville, and then you're going to have 0 clinicals or rotations during this. This is going to be the semester I'm currently in right now. Again, there's going to be no actual hands-on clinical or rotation work happening during this semester. Semester 3, you can see right here where it says clinical anesthesia. This is where you're actually going to be hands-on practicing anesthesia, obviously under heavy supervision, but that you're still going to be in the hospital doing work, unpaid work naturally. And then semester 4, you're going to see that continue on again. You're going to have clinical anesthesia once more. So that's going to be the continuation. And then once you're done with semester 4, you kind of graduate into rotations. And these are the ones where you are no longer directly tethered to Jacksonville, you're able to travel around. The sites get picked for you, but you are no longer tethered down to Jacksonville. So you could be anywhere that NSU has a connection. If NSU has a connection in California, Arizona, Vermont, I'm just naming random states, but if there's a connection there, you could end up there. So take all that into consideration. You can also see the credit hours listed all the way around. So just something to consider. The reason this one says anesthesia review is because that is about the time where the students are going to be taking the certification exam. So that's why there's that extra little class listed right there. So there's all of that. So yeah, this is where I'm currently at right now. And again, you can see exactly what classes this program's going through. You can check for every single program under the NSU umbrella. So just do a little bit of Google and you can find it. What do we got next? What are the best healthcare experience jobs other than anesthesia tech for pre-CAA? So I was an anesthesia tech. I wasn't an anesthesia tech for that long, and I was at a very small outpatient pediatric facility. We do have some people in our program who were anesthesia techs for a couple years. But as far as healthcare experience jobs, we've had respiratory therapist. I think we do have a former nurse. Basically, you can do any healthcare job, and that's going to count as relevant experience as long as you're able to kind of tie it into your what I'll call a mission statement, where effectively, as long as you're able to say what you pulled from the job, so let's just say you were a pharmacist assistant or something along those lines, as long as you're able to say, well, I recognize I wasn't doing hands-on anesthesia work, but, I learned about drug dosing, I learned about the importance of cross-reactivity, I learned, how to catch these sort of things, I learned antibiotic management, and you just go down that list of, it's not direct, but here is everything I learned, and it does apply to anesthesia. So just be able to find that connection. Some things it obviously will be easier to find that connection. And other things it might be a little bit harder. So we have someone in our class who's a respiratory therapist. A lot of the work in anesthesia is basically what a respiratory therapist does in terms of machine management, ventilation, oxygenation, perfusion. A lot of respiratory therapist work is that. So something to consider. Nursing, obviously, exact same pathway. You have direct hands-on experience with patients. We do have an former EMT? Yeah, she's former EMT. But she was able to tie it. As long as you're able to tie in your experience to anesthesia and be able to say, this is what I learned, this is how I can apply it, you should be good to go, honestly. So there's not really a best job. Just like there's not a best thing to have on your application. It's kind of taking into the full perspective and knowing what to do with what you've been given. So, is there a stigma in reapplying? There is not a stigma in reapplying. I've talked to our program director as well as one of the people who's in charge of interviews, and there is not a stigma in reapplying. The only exception to where there is a stigma would be if let's say you got declined in 2023 and you come back in 2024 and you have the exact same application. Well, they're going to say, what did you do for this year that you were off? And if you don't have anything to show of, actively working to improve yourself, improve your application, become a better candidate, well, they're going to look down upon that because you're not taking the time to develop who you are and the applicant that you are. So there is no stigma in reapplying, and honestly there is somewhat of an advantage in reapplying as long as you do improve your resume, because it shows, yes, I got declined, but here I am now and I want in now more than ever. So it does speak highly to that. So there is no stigma in reapplying, and for a little while there I was nearly certain I was going to have to reapply myself. So there is no stigma. Good undergraduate major. Basically, I'm not going to say anything Although you can really do it with anything as long as you meet the minimum requirements. You can do it with anything. So, in my opinion, anything healthcare, biology, physiology is what's best. But again, it's kind of like, what's the best job? It depends on what you can pull from it. If you are, I don't know, like a journalism major, it might be a little bit harder to tie it in. But if you lean into, well, so I was a journalism major, and during that time, one of the things I covered was something like medical malpractice, and I had to learn all about it and how it applied to anesthesia, and here's what I was able to pull from that. As long as you're able to, again, pull your ideas together and be able to, I hate to say like justify it, but be able to show, just be able to sell yourself. The simplest way I can put it. Be able to show that you are able to apply your major, be able to relate it to anesthesia. Even if it's a stretch, it's better than nothing. And just meet the minimum requirements and meet them well. So, I was personally a biomedical science major, but as you can see right there, we have someone in our class who is a business major. So, anybody can do it. It just might take you a little bit more. And that's okay. You have to work at something in life, and if it's this, then it's this. But if you want it bad enough, you can definitely do it. Is there anything I should study before starting? So I'm just kind of asking this question, presuming that you say you just got accepted. You're worried like, oh, do I need to review stuff? You don't really have to. I did a little bit, but not too in depth. I basically reviewed anatomy and physiology. I think it was on YouTube. There's a guy who does crash courses. I just kind of watched those videos to kind of relay that foundation, and that helped me a lot. But honestly, just take the time off, enjoy the free time, and set yourself up a good foundation. Make sure you find an apartment you like. Make sure you pick a good area. Make sure that you have, let's say you have like a computer that's not working. Make sure you go get that fixed. So no, you don't really need to. It might help it, especially if you have a weak point. Like if you know physiology is your weak point, there's no harm in going ahead and getting that ball rolling. But just my 2 cents on that. Does undergraduate location matter? Is prestigious better? Location isn't really important. Again, just as long as you meet the minimums and as long as they're an accredited university, it really shouldn't make that big of a difference. We have some people in our program, and I have never heard of those colleges. Does that speak poorly of them? No, not really. It's just that I've never heard of them. I've heard of, Michigan or Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, UF. I've heard of all of those places, but some of these I've never heard of, and that's okay. So location doesn't matter as long as it's accredited. Is prestigious better? Well, let's say you went to Harvard instead of Clemson. Well, that probably is going to look a little bit better, but it's not a requirement. It could, again, be a selling point for you, but it's not. You're not on the wrong foot just because you went to some local university that, is like half the size of the big state school that's also there. So don't get too hung up on it. Any interview advice? Honestly, I was not good at interviewing. I got a little bit better about it on the second go around because I learned from my mistakes. But honestly, just be yourself up to a point. You're obviously still going to want to be a very likable person, be friendly, be someone that you'd want to have a conversation with. Don't be the loudest person, don't be the quietest person. Just kind of go with whatever feels right. You're going to be nervous for it. Everybody is. The good news is, again, everybody's nervous. So if you start worrying about, what are they going to think about me? Everybody's thinking that. So just do the best that you can. And if you get accepted for multiple interviews or you get invites for multiple interviews, and let's say you bomb the first one, learn from it for your second one. That's what I did. I didn't bomb the first one, but I wasn't exactly near the top of that list. I can probably guarantee it. So, be yourself, learn from your mistakes, do mock interviews, maybe not with your friends, but maybe, your mom, your dad, aunt, uncle, somebody that you're kind of close with, but not like you're going to crack up and joke with them and not be able to take it seriously. Look up anesthesia interview questions. Look up, just generic interview questions. I can guarantee at least a few of those are going to come up. There's only so many different ways they can ask, why do you want to be in this program? So, just be yourself. Stay calm, cool, and collected. So that was just a list of some questions that I've personally been asked, as well as I've just found on the internet. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I do check the YouTube comments, although I did miss one, and I do still feel bad about that, but I did end up responding to them eventually. So YouTube comments are a good way to reach out to me. You can also reach out to me on Instagram at myCAAjourney. That seemed to be the popular route for people to go. I probably do check Instagram a little bit more than YouTube, so just keep that in mind before you shoot me a YouTube comment. But other than that, I'll answer basically any question I can that won't get me in trouble or won't get the university in trouble. So to that end, I think I'll go ahead and wrap this video up here. So if you made it this long into the 36-minute video, I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a good day, and I wish you the best of luck in your application or continuing education. So, thank you. Have a good one.